All right, we're going to set up some new contacts from scratch for a wicker. And there's two ways of doing this. You can, well, first of all, we're just going to be working with the armature most of the time. So let's expand the whole armature by pressing Alt, click on the arrow, and we're going to be mostly working with the head, and specifically the left and right bones. There's two ways of doing this. One of them is to just drag the contacts underneath the left and right eye. So just make sure that they are basically in that hierarchy. So a situation like this. However, the problem with this is that this is kind of harder to do because you have to line these up. You have to line the contacts up such that they are not overlapping with the eyes, but also that they don't overlap with blend shapes such as a blink or any kind of other blend shapes you might have that include the eyes somehow. And then the other one, the other way of doing that is to parent constrain these. Just basically have them on the head bone, hide both the eyes. So it's completely set the scale of the eyes to 0, and then try and constrain these to these eyes. So let's just start with that. That might be because that's going to be simpler. So let's just reset these. So of course, obviously first find the left and right eyes, and what we're going to do is we're going to drag contacts into the left and right eye, and we're going to try our best to match the scale, because right now this is pretty big, and we don't want that. So we're just gonna try to match the scale. If I can zoom in, well, first of all, let's just guess some random scale and set it to like that small value. That up a little bit. Yeah, okay. So that looks like it's a little bit too small. Scale it up a little bit more. Still needs a little bit. Still needs a little bit more. So let's manually edit these. Let's give that an 8, maybe. Now let's give that a 9. Okay, that's a lot better. So now we're just going to see if any of the blend shapes over here on the body cause any blink. No, that looks fine. There's not any overlap. So we're gonna stick with that. Okay. So now we have these guys over here. And now, after you've set them up, you're gonna want to select them both and drag them. Well, I recommend renaming them. So left contact and right contact. Select them both and drag them onto the head bone. So now they're in the same position, but they're no longer under the eye bones. Now you're gonna want to set the eye bones to 0, basically. So the eyes aren't gonna be shown at all. And now let's go into orthographic view and drag some materials on there. I'm gonna use this one. Go into the materials, select the centered option, and I'm going to clear any overlay textures that we have for this one. So now we're going to want to basically rotate these until it kind of line up. And so it looks like the center of the eye is actually in the center of the eye, right? Because right now it just kind of looks weird, and like we got to move them around a little bit, right? So for this, I recommend making sure that this is set to local and not global. So we'll set it to global, and you're gonna really want to be careful with your rotation over here. And just kind of keep an eye on that because things might get a little bit weird. Right off the bat, I'm just going to set X and Z rotations of these two to 0 just to make sure that we're good there. So they match. And just to be super sure, I'm gonna make sure that the X is the same for this. Oh, looks good. So now we're going to start with the right contact. Let's move it about a bit. So that looks good. Now we're going to try to take these rotation values and copy them over the left contact and see how well we can do with that. Okay, not quite right. We're going to invert the X and then we're going to invert the Y. Alright, that looks way better. Honestly, I'd call that finished. Like, it's kind of good. Yeah. And if you want to tweak these, I recommend tweaking one eye and then copying the values over to the other eye. It's better. Now we're not quite done yet. What we're going to want to do is we're going to want to parent constrain these to the eye bones. So add parent constraint component to both the left and right contacts here. And now we're going to want to add a new constraint source, drag in the left eye for the left eye, on the right eye, new constraint source, right eye. Looks good. Press activate, and now we're going to move the eye bones themselves and see if our eyes line up. Which they do. Very good. That's exactly what we want. That's exactly what we want. So now your contacts should move properly with your eyes in game. The other way of setting up contacts is to just keep the contacts underneath the left and right eye bones in the eye hierarchy. So the start is pretty much the same. Just drag contacts into the left and right eye bones, adjust the scale till it looks about right. One of the things I like to do to make this a bit clearer is to actually select the eyes themselves and increase their scale so that I'm working with a giant, so I'm working with something that's pretty big, which should really help make some fine-grained adjustments. Also, I'm in orthographic view, which might cause some issues right now, so try to graphic view. You're not going to be playing VRChat in orthographic view anyway, so. Okay, so it looks like it wants to be at about 0.8, 1.85, 1.9. 1.9 looks good. Now let's select the right eye, revert the scale. Click the left eye, revert the scale, and context should be properly set in place. And now, just to make sure that everything is properly lined up, let's select both of our eye bones and start moving them around and see if there's any clipping issues. Which there don't appear to be, so good. Let's Control Z that. And also go into our body and check the blend shapes. Is there any overlap? No, there is not. We are good. Both eyes. All right. We're good. So now let's go into orthographic view. Let's select guys. And now let's put on a material. Select both contacts, drag the material on, and now we're going to want to rotate them to adjust them. So let's start with the right eye over here. Again, make sure you're on local here and not global. Let's adjust it. One of the things I've noticed is that you kind of want to avoid situations where you have multiple XYZ values. You usually only want to have some rotation in X and some rotation either Y or Z, but never both, because that's going to cause some headaches when you're trying to mirror these values over. Try to keep only X or Y and Z. Fine. I've noticed that if you rotate along the Z axis first and then along the Y, things work out way better. Oh, it looks good. All right. Now let's copy these rotation values over into the left eye. And RZ is 0. Okay, so that doesn't look quite right. So what we're going to do is we're going to negate the Y and then negate the X. And that looks about right to me. That's pretty much it. And just to test, we're fine. We're good. That's it.